years ago, I was in the country of Venezuela, serving as a third party between the government and the political opposition at a time of intense conflict, with a lot of people fearing a civil war. My colleague Francisco Diaz and I had an appointment with the president, Hugo Chavez, at 9 p.m. at the presidential palace. Finally, at midnight, we were ushered in to see the president, who had his entire cabinet arrayed behind him. And he asked me, "So, Yuri, what do you think of the situation going on here?" And I said, "Mr. President, I've been talking to your ministers here and to the opposition, and I think you're making some progress." "Progress? What do you mean, progress?" he shouted. "You're blind. You're not seeing all the dirty tricks those traitors are up to." And he leaned in very close to my face and proceeded to shout. What was I going to do? Part of me felt like defending myself naturally. But what good would it do for me to get into an argument with the president of Venezuela? How would that advance peace? So I just listened. I gave him my full attention. I listened to where he was coming from. And President Chavez was known, he was famous for making 8-hour speeches. But after 30 minutes of me just nodding and listening, I saw his shoulders slowly sag, and he said to me in a very weary tone of voice, "So, Yuri, what should I do?" That's the sound of a human mind opening to listen. So I said, "Mr. President, it's almost Christmas. The country needs a break. Last year, all the festivities were canceled because of the conflict. Why not propose a truce this time so that people can enjoy the holidays with their families, and after that, everybody will maybe be in a better mood to listen?" He said, "That's a great idea. I'm going to announce that in my next speech." His mood had completely shifted. How? Through the simple power of listening. Because I listened to him, he was more ready to listen to me. So there are at least 3 important reasons why it's important to listen in any negotiation or conflict. The first is that it helps us understand the other side. Negotiation, after all, is an exercise in influence. You're trying to change someone else's mind. How can you possibly change someone else's mind if you don't know where their mind is? Listening is key. The second reason, just as important, is it helps us connect with the other human being. It helps us build rapport. It builds trust. It shows we care. After all, everybody wants to be heard. And the third is, as with President Chavez, it makes it more likely that the other person is going to listen to us. It helps us get to yes. In short, listening may be the cheapest concession we can make in a negotiation. It costs us nothing, and it brings huge benefits. Listening may be the golden key that opens the door to human relationship. So how do we listen? Well, it turns out that we often take listening for granted as something easy and natural. But in fact, at least in my experience, real listening, genuine listening, is something that needs to be learned and practiced every day. In ordinary listening, we're hearing the words, and we're often thinking, where do I agree? Where do I disagree? What am I going to say in response? In other words, the focus is on us. In genuine listening, however, the spotlight moves to the other person. We put ourselves in their shoes. We tune into their wavelength. We listen from within their frame of reference, not just ours. And that's not easy. In genuine listening, we listen not just for what's being said, but for what's not being said. We listen not just to the words, but to what's behind the words. We listen for the underlying emotions and feelings, the underlying needs, what that person really needs or wants. So if listening is so useful, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, to tell you the truth, it's not so easy. I mean, if I reflect on my own experience for a moment, there are times when I feel like, I'm listening pretty well in my work, only to go home and find out I'm not listening so well to my wife, for example. It's humbling, I can tell you. The real problem in the way, what makes it so hard to listen, is that there's so much going on in our minds, so much noise and distraction, that we don't have the mental and emotional space to be able to truly listen to the other side. So, how do we clear our minds? It may seem odd, but the secret I find is if we want to listen to the other side, we have to learn to listen to ourselves first. When I was sitting there with President Chavez, what really helped me was that just beforehand, I had taken a few moments of quiet just to pay attention to what was going on for me, to listen to myself, to quiet my mind. So when he began shouting, I was ready. I could notice, in fact, that my cheeks were reddening, that my jaw was a little clenched. I felt some fear or some anxiety. And by paying attention to those sensations and emotions, I was able to let them go so that I could then listen truly to President Chavez. So what if before an important or delicate or sensitive conversation, we took a moment of silence just to tune in, listen to where we are? I believe if we did that, if we listened truly to ourselves first, we would find it a lot easier to listen to others.